Hey, good afternoon. It is Monday night, and it's Monday night, February 23rd, if I'm not mistaken. And tonight, you got Dialogue with Dozie, your host. Dozie, the second part, my counterpart, KVE. Let's say he's on assignment, okay? Um, we're on tonight. I'm going to be joined shortly by a guest, but tonight I want to give special appreciation to the Go Giga team for all of the work that they've done to make this show tonight a special one. I'm going to talk a little bit about the show in a second, but there's some dedications to the night show, and we, I'm going to be a preacher and say that the human side of me would say I wish we didn't have to do these because they had not occurred, but I've got to live by the scripture says the live is Christ, that dies gain. So we want to dedicate tonight's show. There are four individuals that we want to dedicate it to. And the fifth individual, the show is dedicated to him in its entirety. Okay. The first one is Eric Dane. I ran across this brother about a month ago watching a movie, sitting down watching a movie. It was the latest episode of James Bond. And after seeing what a great role he played, I Googled him, I looked at him and saw, oh, he's pretty popular. Eric Dane was he was a star. He appeared as Jason Dean on Charmed, and as one of his more prominent roles was Dr. Mark Sloan on Grey's Anatomy. In fact, Shonda Rhimes wrote an outstanding review or tribute to him after his passing. And of course, we saw him in James Bond. He appeared in many other movies. Eric Dane passed from Lou Gehrig's disease, and he left a very poignant message to his daughter. I thought it was most appropriate to his daughters upon that disease progressing to the point where it took him out. The one consolation, or I won't say the one, but a consolation is that thankfully he did not suffer a very awfully long time. So the night's dialogue, Eric Dane is one of the ones where this show has been dedicated to. Also, we dedicate the show tonight to Rondell Moore. Rondell Moore, I was speaking to my son Saturday night, and he said, Dad, what's going on? Well, Rondell Moore died on Saturday, sometime over Friday night, going to Saturday. He was a wide receiver for the Minnesota Vikings, young man, 24 years of age, and he left us very early in this life. And I'll talk more about him in a second. Well, I'll say this: one of his good friends, who was a star, I won't even call his name, but he had just talked to Rondell before he died, and he sent a tweet out that said, "Dang, bro, we just talked, man. You should have told me this. We should have discussed these things." So Rondell Moore left us about, well, I'll just say what the medical examiner has said appears to be self-inflicted gunshot wound. Hey, Mr. McGrath, hello, thank you for joining us. The next one is to Kara Broxton. She's a WNBA superstar who died over the weekend, over the past few days. Accident victim, a victim of an accident there in the Atlanta area, car accident. She's a two-time NBA champion. You see her standing with those championship chips or trophies in her hand, and she left us. Her mark is far left behind us, and we will miss her. But the dialogue wants to send tribute to her. Tonight's show is dedicated to her with many others. Okay, and then there's Trooper Michael Diego. You know, I'm partial to law enforcement. Trooper Diego died by what is called, he suffered a medical emergency while doing a training exercise for the Florida Highway Patrol, which is one of the most strenuous training regiments in the nation of law enforcement. And he died, and there were several nice tributes you saw to him on social media. And the dialogue sends our love and prayers out to his family, as they go out to all of our victims. And the last tribute goes out to His name is Janasius Wheeler. Janasius Wheeler. But most of us know him as Lil Papa, or that boy Papa. Um, and the Lil Papa to my family is like family. Overheard recently one of my grandnieces thanking him over the phone while visiting the Jacksonville area in the last 3 or 4 weeks for a gift that he had given for Christmas, and then again for that child's birthday. And Lil Papa is he was like, he looked up to my nephew Dozie, who left us in 2015, who was murdered on the streets of Jacksonville. And Papa looked up to him and actually shot videos, music videos at Desi's house, and he shot music videos in his final resting place. And we loved and respect him. Been to his house, met his grandmother. He's one of the ones who instigated what they call Dozie Block, which was dedicated to my nephew. And Lil Papa left us very unexpectedly on Wednesday. And probably we're going to be doing a show on what's causing our young men to end their lives. That's something that's new to our community, relatively new, particularly in mass, to these numbers of young people, and to the five of them, to Eric Dane, to Rondell Moore, to Kara Broxton, to Trooper Michael Diego, and to our dear little brother, Lil Papa. We dedicate tonight's dialogue with Dozie. Tonight's show is, we're not going to take the time to dedicate tonight's show. Joining me a little later will be the Reverend Dr. John Newman, who some of you know. He has been on the show with us several times. He hasn't been on since the reboot, but a dear friend. He's going to be with us tonight as we look back and pay tribute and honor Reverend Jesse Jackson, Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson, who left us. Again, I repeat the scripture, which says to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. And Jesse Jackson left us at age 84 after an illness that he has suffered much from in the last several years, particularly. And he left us on in the overnight hours of Tuesday morning. And the night show, we're doing a show about him. Now, I'm dressed the way I am. You know, you usually got your boy with leisurely dressed, leisure clothes, a cap that's flipped back busted. Not tonight. Tonight, I'm paying tribute to him, and I'm dressing like he would dress. The only thing I didn't have was a sweater that he would wear under a dress coat, kind of like a sports coat. But I'm doing my best to dress as he is. I'll say this. I've had, and I told the church this yesterday, I've had 4 mentors in life. Our dad, Dozie Honor Sr., of course, my father in ministry, Bishop Rudolph McKissick Sr., and I was extremely close to Bishop Tom Diamond, real close to him. He mentored me, hastened me to get on and get the seminary and get into the ministry full time, opened doors for me. But the other gentleman who mentored me from a distance, and that's Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson there in Chicago. Had opportunities to meet Jesse Jackson through Pastor Diamond, while traveling with Pastor Diamond, and later with Reverend Richard Wilson in Louisville, Kentucky. We met him in Chicago. We met him in his office, and he remembered having met me while I was traveling with Pastor Diamond earlier in that decade, and just found him to be an extraordinary individual. When Dr. Henry Lyons was elected president of the National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated, my friend and I snuck back into the press room, and that was Jesse Jackson. Reverend Jesse Jackson was with our friend Dr. Lyons, and assisting him with the press. and was a part of that press conference with Dr. Lyons. Kind of a funny story. In 1982, I think it was, uh, Jesse Jackson landed to deliver a speech at the Florida General Baptist Convention, the Christian Congress of Christian Education, and the Klan said that if he landed, they were going to kill him. I was still a police officer, and Dr. Lyons, who recently left us, we dedicated the show to him recently. Dr. Lyons asked me to provide security. That was before Florida became way before it became open carry state, and he knew as law enforcement I was carrying, and so I did just as he asked, and I guarded him with my life. I put my life on the line. I left my recent bride and just spent that time, got him through his speaking engagement there with the convention, and afterwards some of the conversations and the conferences he had there briefly afterwards, and then I was relieved until I could press on. Thought he was all right. Thank God it's I can say it's funny because nothing happened. The next time I saw Reverend Jackson was about an hour later. He was sitting in the window of a storefront of a soul food restaurant. And I said, all this protection we gave him, he's sitting right in the window of a soul food restaurant. But that's where he was going to go and what he was going to do. Very personable, very affable, very down to earth. I remember Pastor Diamond saying to him one time, he was trying to make sure he knew him, was in. He said, I know y'all bean pickers from Florida. So he really did know us and reminded us. And then, of course, when Reverend Richard Wilson introduced me to him and I reintroduced myself to him, he knew who I was. During his 1984 convention run, he stopped through Louisville before heading down to Atlanta, where he was going to give one of the speeches, I would say one of the 5 greatest speeches of all times at the convention. And Madam Producer, Miss Latoya, Madam Producer was with me, and he was doing a rally, and then during the rally, we were asked to anyone who had their children with them, could they go and assist them backstage folding some brochures. And my daughter, I think, was about 7, maybe 8 years old, and she went back there. She soon came back to me. But Madam Producer, I'm sure you remember that. That was a memorable moment. And then we saw them as they took off on the buscade, the motorcade of buses that went from Louisville down to Atlanta, where he would deliver that speech. In 1984, while on a security detail for then President Ronald Reagan, I was assigned to the press box at the Daytona 500 Speedway. I was right at the foot of the press box, right at the steps, and I was with the Secret Service agent, and we were telling war stories. And I said, yeah, man, this is, I can say now I'm guarding a president. I guarded Jesse Jackson last year, a year before last. He said, you guarded him? He said, man, let me tell you, I worked his detail earlier. He said, there's not a more energetic, compassionate, but just energetic. The man never rests. He is just ever ready, always pushing it. And as maybe some of you all can recall, Reverend Jackson would stay. He would live. He won many of those Midwest states. In Time magazine, I can see the news cover Newsweek. What does Jesse want? Why does he run? He wants to be president of the United States. That's why he ran, and that's what he wanted. But he would stay with the farmers who voted and helped him to win those primaries. While he was in the inner city, he stayed in the hood. And when I say he stayed in the hood, I don't mean he stayed with preachers who had nice homes on the outskirts. He stayed down in the projects. And that agent would tell me that Jesse would go to bed sometimes at 10:30, and he's up again at 1:30, 2 o'clock, and he wants to go out and shoot hoops out in the middle of those projects. And he said it was so hard convincing him not to do it. And he would just go do it and just say the Lord will cover him, because they didn't have time to order a sufficient battery of snipers to protect. And so Reverend Jackson, we're going to look at his life through video. My guest is in. Dr. Newman, how are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing fine. Thank you, Dozie.
Man, it's so good to see you. It's been a while. You know, I don't bother you. I save you for special ones. And tonight is a special show as we honor our brother.
Sure.
So I think you all know Dr. Newman is a very eminent pastor of the Mount Calvary Baptist Church. Is it the gathering place, Doc?
The sanctuary at Mount Calvary.
Sanctuary. I'm sorry. The sanctuary in Kings Road in Jacksonville. And they have food pantries and food giveaways on Saturdays. He's a special one. And for him to take time to be with us tonight, we thank you, Doc. Let's move right into the show. Let's look at what they're saying about the life and mission of Reverend Jesse Jackson. We're coming after.
Born in Greenville, South Carolina in 1941, Jackson was raised in the deep poverty of the segregated South. A high school athlete, he won a football scholarship to the University of Illinois, but headed home after only a year. He left, but in 1966, at the age of 25, he returned to study at Chicago Theological Seminary. He was young, ambitious, and increasingly controversial.
I am somebody.
Chicago became his base, his presence and power growing as a civil rights leader and as a politician.
From slave ship to championship, our time has come. From our house to White House, our time has come.
Reverend, I'll defer to you, sir. As we categorize some things, what do you think about the beginnings in the mission of Dr. Jackson?
Well, you know, he was a protege of Dr. Martin Luther King. And I think Dr. King was probably the greatest influence on his life. There were many influences, of course, but I think Dr. King was probably preeminently the greatest influence on him, particularly as it relates to the tactic and the strategy of nonviolence. I really believe that it was Dr. King's influence that kind of, I won't say pushed him, or coerced, but encouraged him to go towards nonviolence. You know, there were choices back in that time. You know, of course, Malcolm, he went in a different direction. The Black Panther Party went in a different direction. But Dr. King, particularly as he was influenced by Mahatma Gandhi, he influenced, of course, a generation of which Reverend Jesse Jackson was a part of that. And I think it was infectious in that he was able to glean so much of Dr. King's genius and then expanded in a way through Operation Push. And of course, he would have always had the indelible impression of that fateful night when he was with Dr. King, Dr. King was murdered. But I really believe that it was Dr. King's influence on him that really helped to shape the narrative of what became Operation Push. Of course, it was Operation Breadbasket that Dr. King put Jesse in charge of. And that, of course, turned into Operation Push and the Rainbow Coalition, and the rest, of course, is history. But Dr. King really had a tremendous influence on him.
I'm so glad that you brought up the fact that it was Dr. King's influence over Jesse, which helped Reverend Jackson, which helped to shape who he was. Mm-hmm. Because I contended that he could have, nobody knows, but he could have very easily have gone to one of the other change agent organizations. Mm-hmm. But as a becoming preacher of the gospel of Christ, it was a strong influence of Dr. King that brought him and kept him. And I'm so glad that you brought that into our. Good evening, Miss Phyllis. Just a few other notes about his humble beginnings, because in that clip it said that he graduated or he went to seminary at 25. Reverend Jackson actually went to college. He was a great organizer. He was a class president in high school. He went to the University of Illinois, and he didn't feel that he had gotten a proper chance to play quarterback there, and which is the position he played. And he went on to North Carolina A&T there in Greensboro, and there he played quarterback and defensive back. He was a class president, and also where he led many sit-ins and demonstrations. And I just want to get that out. He went on to CTS, Chicago Theological Seminary, and he fell 3 classes short of his Master's of Divinity because he was grabbed by the movement, as you said, Dr. Stark, what then was Operation Breadbasket. Then, and he would go back later and be awarded the Master of Divinity because his work has certainly earned him those three classes that he had missed. Thank you for that. Let's discuss the start of his prominence. I think let's go to that clip. It starts his prominence and catapults him to where he is and what he became.
States fighting black on black crime, urge students to excel academically, and implored generations to fight the growing dangers of illegal drugs.
Down with dope, up with hope.
Reverend, I defer.
You talking to me?
Yes, sir. Just
Okay.
talking about his prominence in some of those organizations.
Well, I mean, absolutely. His gift, as I think the adage is, your gift will make room for you. Jesse's gift, he was charismatic. He was a person who was the life of whatever environment he was found in. People gravitated towards him. He had an imposing, physique in terms of whenever he showed up, he's tall, handsome, famous for that afro that he wore, and just was able to articulate from a really pure place. Let me just kind of share this with you from my own experience with him. And this is something that no one really would know. But when I was the chair, I co-chaired his presidential campaign in North Florida in '84, and I chaired it in '88 in Jacksonville. And on one of the trips when he came into town, and I was with Secret Service. In fact, interestingly enough, to this very day, I still have relationships with Secret Service men who guarded him. It was amazing how when we picked him up at the airport, we were in the limousine coming down to an event. And believe it or not, it was raining, it was drizzling. And here he is on his way to do a speech. We're in the car together. And what was on his mind was not the campaign. It was not how long it's going to be before we get there. It was not a plane we were going to catch after that to go to Tallahassee and then go from there to Atlanta. In fact, the first time I ever flew private was with Jesse, actually. But what was on his mind? He looks out the window and sees the rain, and he says to me, I'm really concerned about our children because of the acid rain that's falling out of the sky. That's what he said. And the reason why I remember that is that it wasn't about anything political in terms of what he was going to say or his campaign. He was legitimately concerned. No cameras, no reporters, just me and a couple other folk in Secret Service who were escorting all of us actually. Acid rain is where his mind was, because he was concerned about the environmental impact and what that would do to people, particularly young people. That just said so much about him as a person. And that anecdote obviously stayed with me because it just literally helped me to see the real person, not the character or the caricaturization that the media was trying to do. and frame him in a particular frame, that's who he really was. He really cared about what he cared about. And he didn't just care about black folk. He
Right.
cared about everybody. And he gutturally and viscerally, like with acid rain, if he cared, he cared.
He literally put together a real, it was that inside of him which pushed him to start what was a real rainbow coalition.
Absolutely.
So, got to get the two more of these quickly in before the break. No great leader or no great person of prominence would be great if controversy did not dog them. And let's just kind of see, let's just kind of see a little bit of what they said about him.
Companion. He was in Memphis in 1968 when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. The morning after, Jackson appeared on television in a shirt he said was covered in King's blood, raising questions, according to author Barbara Reynolds.
No one knows where he got the blood because he didn't come near Dr. King.
How much blood on me because he was bleeding profusely. He had been shot in the neck.
So there were several controversies that would follow him, and as any great person, one of the closest proteges of Dr. King did a lot of research for this show. One of the closest proteges was no, it wasn't Shuttlesworth. It was another one that I saw last night, a clip where he actually said that there was no way that Jesse could have gotten to Chicago that next morning and gotten on a plane when they were all there making arrangements to get Dr. King's remains back to Atlanta to the family and so forth. And that was one controversy. The controversy was that he loved the camera. He never saw a camera he did not love. And of course, we'll talk a little bit later about his sixth child. He has six children, five at home, five with his family. I'm trying to see how to say that. And I want to talk about that one very briefly later. I want to spend a lot of time. But what is it that makes, and they did that with our Lord, what is it that makes people strive to the controversy? You just talked about this man caring about people having to be out in acid rain. And that was just one piece of his compassion. But we would rather dog him with controversy. What is it that makes leadership susceptible to that, Doc?
I'm not so sure it's a matter of leadership. I think it's just a human proclivity to want to speak of the foibles and fallacies of other human beings because it causes the person who is pointing those things out to feel they have a sense of leverage and advantage. People oftentimes, when your vision is larger than them, will be more likely and have the proclivity to try to cut you down to their size. And the way that they do that is by speaking to your fallibility and your mistakes and proclivities in terms of your human fallibility. So that happens across the board. It's not unusual. Someone who is highly gifted also having other streams that are run through them that are contradictory, because that's the human story. That's the human dilemma. All of us, and the Bible very clearly says, all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. He's no different. The issue is that God has never had a perfect vessel except his son.
Wow.
So why should we be surprised when we find that great people have also great issues? So that's not to excuse, that's just to explain, because the truth of the matter is, when your vision is large and it's larger than most people can imagine, and of course they don't have your burden, but there's a tremendous burden of vision because you can see what other people can't see. And so when they cannot see it, and when they look at all of the accolades and all of the attention that you're getting for that vision that you birthed, oftentimes what they'll do is try to shrink you down to their size to get a sense of superiority, because your confidence to them makes them insecure. And what you can't do is shrink your insecurity to make them comfortable.
Mac, Phyllis, we see you, Mac. You are all over this. I'm not, you are not wrong about anything you're saying there. In fact, let's do that right now. Let's go. The let's look at his accomplishments, Doc. He had a series of international accomplishments that you never heard of. I served the church in an hour and a half outside of Chicago. I would take our youth over to Operation Push. I became a very close friend through Reverend Williams, Dickie Williams, real close to Reverend Tyrone Kreider. He came down here several times before he ultimately left us.
Yeah.
But I was, yes, sir, when he was running Push, and just a lot of stories with him. But when Jesse came back, met just Johnny Cochran there through him. Let's look at some of the accomplishments.
Is the invention of a Negro leader or black leader.
First, Operation Breadbasket, then Operation Push became his platform. He helped oust Mayor Richard J. Daley and his allies from the 1972 Democratic National Convention. He battled Mayor Jane Byrne over minority participation over what was to become Chicago Fest. Chicago was his home, but the world was his stage. Fighting apartheid in South Africa, supporting Palestinian rights, and in 1984, securing the release of a downed American pilot in Syrian-held territory in Lebanon. The remarkable life of Jesse Louis Jackson began as the son of an unwed teenage mother with little prospects for a life of achievements, but blessed with intellect and a gift of oratory.
I can be what I want to be.
Doc, can you take like 1 minute? Because we got one more to go for the break that we're already over time for.
Well, I mean, I think the video speaks for itself in terms of his progression from, again, Operation Breadbasket to Operation Push, his ability to negotiate for Lieutenant Goodman, and other things that he did. I once had a pastor, believe it or not, come to me and ask me if I could talk to Jesse about helping one of his friends who was in Cuba or had a relative in Cuba and wanted to do a medical mission. And Jesse happened to be flying in for an event or something. And I spoke to him and said, yeah, because he could speak to Fidel Castro. That's the kind of stuff that he could do. He didn't allow the fact that Fidel was communist to stop him from having a conversation, because it was a medical mission and it was done. It was successful.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. After the release of Lieutenant Goodman, Mac, he was, and you may have been in the service at that point, Mac. You and my brother may have been in at that point in the service. Reagan barely cleared him to go on that mission. But we're just because of time constraints, we're not talking about everything he did with Mandela, the things he did with Venezuela, all of those that quote unquote communist bloc countries that he dealt with compassionately and missions of compassion. And that was what he was. He was bigger than just a local creature. So when people complain about Johnson not allowing his body to lie in state at the Capitol, forget that he's bigger than the United States. South Carolina stepped up, and others. Let's look at his affiliation with Dr. King before we go into the break.
Anchor Art Norman, who knew Reverend Jackson for decades.
He would be walking a picket line, serving the homeless meals on weekends, turkeys, Christmas toys. That's what he did. And he wanted to do that. And he was still in college.
Our Marion Brooks sits down with Art Norman to talk about Jackson's legacy. And we'll bring that to you next. Then
Is a freedom train coming. But you got to register the ride. Get on board. Get on board. Get on board. Get on board. Right on.
we're continuing our coverage, remembering the Reverend Jesse Jackson tonight.
And this afternoon, our Marion Brooks got a chance to sit down with former NBC5 anchor and reporter Art.
So that clip. Anyway, Dr. King saw the work that Jesse was doing, as you mentioned already, John. He saw the fantastic work, the fantastic ability, the potentials in this young man, and he brought him on board. That's why he got out of seminary early, and he was sent back here ultimately to Chicago. I'm not in that area anymore. I'm saying he was sent back here to Chicago. He was sent back there to start Operation Breadbasket, which, of course, you know, the rest is history. I would take our kids over there to Operation Push, and and I had Operation Push Card. Out here, I was a grown man in my 30s, I guess, at that time. And you would have thought I was a member of Billionaires Club Anonymous. I felt so proud to be a part of such an organization that was doing such great work and would love going into the forums and really just stop watching Push on TV every Saturday mornings for their forums. But Dr. King saw him, and there was a closeness. And Doc, could you just very briefly, before we go into this break, and Madam Producer, we'll go right out of Doc's comments, what Dr. King saw in Jesse, and I know you talked about it somewhat already, but what was that connection, and how did it bring him to where he was with him?
I think Dr. King saw promise in him. I think Dr. King saw that in him there was succession, not necessarily in SCLC, but he saw that in Jesse there was longevity in terms of the movement. And Dr. King was very, very concerned about making sure that the movement would not die with him and that there would be legs, so to speak. And Jesse was a part of that. And so I believe that Dr. King was prescient, saw something in him, invested in him, and that investment, of course, made him, as you just said in the last segment, made him global. You don't get to be global unless someone has made a tremendous investment in you. And we see the interest on that investment manifested in all of the accolades around the world being mentioned about him now.
Thank you, sir. Let's go to break. We're a little over. Let's go to break, and we'll see how we fit this all in. Let's go to a break, and we'll be right back. X.com. You see what a fantastic show they're doing. When we rebooted the show about a month ago, there were many people whom we memorialized in the show, and it was one of the greatest people. I would imagine the Grammys, the BET Awards, and everybody who has done one. Grammys were fantastic. Theirs was last time they did was fantastic. With those who've done it, would take notes from what Go Giga's done. Madam Producer and Go Giga team, the Toyas and Kia, they do a fantastic job. They'll do that for you. They'll build your website to bring prominence. That's a word we're throwing around tonight. That's what we're mentioning. They'll bring prominence to you, your organization, your mission, your work. GoGigaX.com. This I want to do very quickly. We're starting what we're calling a new segment tonight. And it's called, let me share this with you. It's better than saying, I bet you didn't know. Let me share this with you. This past week, the Florida House passed House Bill 203. It still has to go through all those negotiations and everything and come out of the Senate. Just a quick update on it. House Bill 203 is the bill which is the House's version of cutting out property taxes, cutting out property taxes on homesteaded property. It still has to clear the Senate. The Senate is indicating that they may not even get to it during this session. I'm thinking, this is just me, the way I see it, is that they're going to all try to do it right before the election because they're trying to get it on the ballot in November. And I'm thinking they're going to do it at the last legal moment that they can do it, so there'll be less time to argue against it. Listen, in my property taxes, wow, don't y'all go for the okie doke. Don't go for the okie doke. What they want to do is blue counties like Orange, Duval. Well, Duval is becoming more orange, blue again. Palm Beach, when it's acting right. Broward, particularly. Dade now again is kind of getting back blue. What they want to do is use the monies that the property taxes will bring in for municipalities. They want to take that money, and then they would be able to determine the direction that counties go. You know, all of the Florida Doges, all of their stuff went towards the blue counties. Well, one prominent politician here said that he was not going to cooperate. He was going to do what he was supposed to do to uphold the law, but he's not going to cooperate with the craziness that's happening with Homeland Security. I'll leave that there. If that was turned around, if those agencies of local municipalities depended on the state solely, this would be the most conservative right wing, and things they would totally run things from Tallahassee. Who's in Tallahassee? A crazy out governor, a crazy out. Let me just leave it. Don't fall for the okie doke. I'll talk more about that. We got more important things to do tonight. But I just wanted to share that with you. Back to Reverend Jesse Jackson's legacy. That's what we want to reflect back on. Dr. Newman, let's listen to Reverend Al Sharpton and Dr. Andrew Young, Reverend Young, who was right there with one of the proteges of Jesse Jackson, and we'll come back and reflect on it.
To Reverend Jesse Jackson. Reverend Jackson was about 27, I was 13, and ever since then, for 69 years, we bonded. The last time he spoke in New York, he spoke at the House of Justice for us. I can't think of a time that we were not spending time together. Now, he was a hard taskmaster. He would always get on me about, why are you on this issue? You need to be more studied on this. But he was one who was more responsible than anyone for teaching me activism. On a personal level, my family and I used to spend every Christmas at the Jackson's house. And the last 2 Christmases took my daughters, one who's with us today, to Chicago. We spent Christmas night at Reverend Jackson's house just 5 weeks ago, and last Christmas. We would feed people at the House of Justice and then go to the airport in the afternoon and fly to be with him.
He was always wanting support, but really also wanting to lead and willing to lead. And he's made a tremendous contribution to this country and to the world.
I'm so glad, Doc, that Andy Young ended up by pointing out that his contributions were not limited to the red, white, and blue, but his contributions were international, and he was right there with them. And in the midst of these, and there were many tributes. Reverend Sharpton, we're affectionately referred to Reverend Al. I remember Jesse saying to him, listen, they're going to come after you, man. You got a forum now, when he first started Politics Nation. And if you'll notice this new version of it, you remember when he used to say, did you think for 1 second I was going to let you get away with that? I got you. Now it's been toned down, especially since this last, the 2024 election. It's been toned down. But fortunately, as you spoke of legacy and Dr. King passing the mantle, as Reverend Al said, he passed the mantle on to him, and others will have to do that. Doc, you know what? If you will, hold on 1 second. Let's look at this crazy poster. This is what I call Orange Madness. Thank you, Madam Producer. What it says is, I knew Jesse. He was all right. We worked together well. He used to rent property. We used to rent time in my properties and so forth, yada, yada, yada. And then he says, he goes on to say, I liked him because he was street smart. And I asked Madam Producer to cut it there because they got crazy after that, talking about, I won't even deal with that. But when you have a Pastor Newman, when you have somebody like Andrew Young, a statesman well into his 90s, to reflect on you like that, and you were arm in arm with him, literally, back in the heart of the struggle, what does that say about the work and the character of Reverend Jesse Jackson?
Well, I think that you're right, and that should be the focus. I think oftentimes we can inadvertently be attracted to the shiny object because it grabs our attention. It's shiny, it stands out. And so there may be a post that is made, such as the one you just referenced, and then the conversation really moves and shifts away from the sacredness of the contribution of Reverend Jackson and all that he did to make so many lives better. And we wind up spending more time than should be in response or in reaction to a post. So I think that you're right in that uh, others who spoke of his greatness, like Dr. Young, and as you just so rightly highlighted, that just as Dr. King passed the mantle down and invested in Jesse, Jesse did the same thing in investing in Al Sharpton. And again, that's how movements continue to move beyond the life of those who may be the primary movers in terms of the original thought processes and come up with the strategies and so forth. So no, I think that you're right in that the focus ought to be on the greatness that others are shining a light on because of just how much of a global citizen and how much of a global contribution Jesse made.
Very quickly, we're going to, I think his children just really showed us a whole lot. They came together a day after, well, he passed on Tuesday morning. Thursday morning, they released, they did a news conference out in front of the house. And we want to do just a rapid fire, just some comments of all of 5 of his 6 children. And we'll comment on the other side of that.
Seminarian. He turned down an opportunity to be a law student at Duke University Law School. And he came here and became a seminarian. And Dr. King saw something special in him because he was organizing with Reverend James Bethel. And he said, I see something special in you. So a semester before he got his master's in divinity, which he ultimately finished, he went on to work for Dr. King. So he had a godly calling, but he had an assignment from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, which he never wavered from throughout his life. There is no one who's been more faithful to the mission of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King than Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson Sr. And so it is today, while we have heavy heart.
Let me begin by expressing our appreciation to everyone who's gathered today. I want to acknowledge the absence of my little sister, our little sister, Jackie Jackson, who would love to have been with us today, but she will be back in Chicago in the not too distant future. I'm particularly proud of my siblings who, under these circumstances, have risen to the occasion of sharing with everyone exactly who our Father is. Over the next week and a half or so, you will learn a lot more about the intimate nature and relationship that we all have with one of the most extraordinary human beings who's ever lived. With that said, I think the task of the business of going forward is in small measure going to fall largely on Yusef and in small measure on me. Dad believed that funerals were not for the dearly departed. He believed funerals were for the living. That door. I remember when Chicago only had Fahey Flynn, Joel Daly, Floyd Calvert, Walter Jacobson. Jesse Jackson helped challenge ABC, CBS, NBC, and the majors to expand the industry to include women and to include women of color. And when I think about some of the great national TV hosts and the fact that African Americans have been anchor persons, Jesse Jackson helped knock down those doors. When I think about black McDonald's owners and Burger King owners and black car dealerships and those who become Pepsi franchise owners and Coca-Cola owners, when I think about the expansion of the Voting Rights Act from 1965 to the present and the 62 African Americans who presently serve in the Congress of the United States and the half-dozen United States senators, some of whom just got there. It was Jesse Jackson who went to Reagan. It was Jesse Jackson who went to subsequent presidents and asked for the extension of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And so we expect a grand meeting of people who are beneficiaries of the life and the work of Jesse Jackson. We expect it from the far right, and they are welcome if they come respectfully. and we expect it from the far left. Honor Mrs. Jessie Jackson. This is her request. Thank you very much.
We are grateful. My father's lived a long life, and the words that he shared with me constantly in this latter part of his life is to remind people that he was a long-distance runner. He ran the full measure of the race, and now this mantle of standing up for freedom, standing up for dignity, standing up for those that have been marginalized is now passed on.
On the field of life, his shoes were well worn. His uniform, dirty with the stripes of imperfection, as he did his best to live up to his Christian calling. Reverend Jackson would say, "It is my religion that makes me political, not my politics that makes me religious."
And unmistakably was known for his discourse, and I think that we've spoken ad nauseum about the fact that our generation, Gen Zers, Gen Alpha, millennials have the responsibility to remain in discourse with one another, because if we're not in proximity to one another, we can't solve the nation's crises at this time. So I think I speak on behalf of Dad that we are urgently called to continue discourse and to remain in conversation, because our proximity is what's going to keep us moving forward in this time. He's always been proximal to all of you, proximal to all of us, and that's the work that our generation is required to do moving forward.
One last question.
Pastor, we're about to get out of here, but after she made those speak, after that's Ashley, that's the daughter who basically grew up in California. I just want to give kudos to the Jackson family. The youngest Jackson, Jackie Jr., as they referred to her, was not able to be there at that point. And Ashley was there, and they allowed her just as real siblings. She said, "I want to thank my siblings." And that's the genius of, I think, our families when we all come together. But the overall package of comments, respond to them, please, sir.
Well, I think that in a real way, they kind of spoke for themselves. You saw the thread that was woven through all of those comments in terms of making sure that his memory is properly honored, that it doesn't become politicized by either political extreme, because even though the media tried to cast and frame Reverend Jackson in a left-wing extremist position, the truth of the matter is 80% of the country really agreed in principle about the things that he wanted. It wasn't extreme, it was actually mainstream. And so when you listen to all the comments that the children made, I think it speaks to the quality of him as a person and the largesse of his heart that is reflected in the fact that his daughter was able to actually be welcomed as part of the family. What a great message that sends. And that young lady and the entire family is one of the things that's I meant to mention earlier. They're very close to my wife. My wife, of course, as you know, Marissa, met Reverend Jackson when she was a teenager, and she was just going through showing me so many of the texts the last couple of years when Reverend Jackson would say, I need to talk to you, give me a call, want to talk to you. And when we would see him in different places, she was like a daughter to him. And so just the love of that family and the legacy that you can see being carried on through just those words there is something for all of us to admire.
Thank you, Doc. And Jesse Jr. would come back after the remarks and would say, after Ash's remarks, he really let them have it, and that's you can find that out there in social media. That whole news conference, about 50 minutes. He really let mainstream media have it. I mean, really let them have it. When he spoke of, he said, just as you said, you crucified him. You put him in the box you wanted him in, but they didn't let that. That was not who our dad was, and that is not. Thank God for social media, because they knew and they're reflecting such. And it's just been great. The couple of days after he transitioned, almost every other feed on my news feed, on my feed, were kind words of tribute to Reverend Jesse Jackson. I'm grateful to have seen that.
As well, and I know we're short on time, as well as it should be, because the reality is that the most powerful part of any life is the narrative. It's the story that is told by the life that you live. And oftentimes what people will try to do is historically reframe and recast the narrative in a light that makes it valuable to them, but it's not necessarily true. And as you alluded to, Jesse did come back very strongly, Junior, and talk about how the media tried to put him in a certain frame that was not historically correct. It wasn't true to his personhood, wasn't true to his vision, and that they tried to make him who they wanted him to be for their own, before clicks and likes and mentions and all that. That's a long time ago, but still so they could sell newspapers and whatever the case may be, that's what they did. And so I thought it was extremely important that he corrects the narrative, because the narrative is the most important thing, even in our days in which we live today. The South lost the war, but they won the narrative.
Yes.
They won the narrative. And so that's why you have to always claim your narrative and not let somebody else take that from you. You always have to claim your own, and the family is claiming his narrative. So it's right that they do that, and I applaud them for that.
Amen. By the grace, by the goodness of Go Giga, they're going to allow us to go over a bit, because and Doc, if you have to go, let me know. We want to play the last. It's about a 12-13 minute clip of Jesse's speech to the 1984 convention, one that left me walking to work that night, barely able to see, because my heart was beaming with joy from what he had done. And we just titled this segment "In His Own Words." This speaks to him as the international humanitarian that he is.
And better as a nation and as a party. We have basic challenges. Freedom in South Africa. We've already agreed as Democrats to declare South Africa to be a terrorist state. But don't just stop there. Get South Africa out of Angola. Free Namibia. Support the frontline states. We must have a new, humane, human rights and assistance policy in Africa. I'm often asked, Jesse, why do you take on these tough issues? They're not very political. We can't win that way. If an issue is morally right, it will eventually be political. It may be political and never be right. Fannie Lou Hamer didn't have the most votes in Atlantic City, but her principles have outlasted every delegate who voted to lock her out. Rosa Parks did not have the most votes. He was morally right. Dr. King didn't have the most votes about the Vietnam War, but he was morally right. If we're principle first, our politics will fall in place. Jesse, why do you take these big, bold initiatives? A poem by an unknown author went something like this: we've mastered the air, we've conquered the sea, annihilated distance and prolonged life, but we're not wise enough to live on this earth without war and without hate. As for Jesse Jackson, I'm tired of sailing my little boat for inside the harbor bar. I want to go out where the big ships float, out on the deep where the great ones are. And should my frail craft prove too slight, the waves that sweep those billows o'er, I'd rather go down in the stirring fight than drowse to death at the sheltered shore. We got to go out, my friend, where the boats are. And then, for our children, young America, hold your head high now. We can win. We must not lose you to drugs and violence, premature pregnancy, suicide, cynicism, pessimism, and despair. We can win. Wherever you are tonight, I challenge you to hope and to dream. Don't submerge your dreams. Exercise above all else. Even on drugs, dream of the day you're drug-free. Even in the gutter, dream of the day that you'll be up on your feet again. You must never stop dreaming. Face reality, yes, but don't stop the way things are. Dream of things they ought to be. Dream. Face pain, but love, hope, faith, and dreams will help you rise above the pain. Use hope and imagination as weapons of survival and progress, but you keep on dreaming, young America. Dream of peace. Peace is rational and reasonable. War is irrational in this age and unwinnable. Dream of teachers who teach for life and not for living. Dream of doctors who are concerned more about public health than private wealth. Dream of lawyers more concerned about justice and the judgeship. Dream of preachers who are concerned more about prophecy than profiteering. Dream on the high road with sound values. And in America, as we go forth to September, October, November, and then beyond, America must never surrender to a high moral challenge. Not surrender to drugs. The best drug policy is a no first use. Don't surrender with needles and cynicism. Let's have no first use on the one hand, or clinics on the other. Never surrender, young America. Go forward. America must never surrender to malnutrition. We can feed the hungry and clothe the naked. We must never surrender. We must go forward. We must never surrender to illiteracy. Invest in our children. Never surrender and go forward. We must never surrender to inequality. Women cannot compromise ERA or comparable word. Women are making 60 cents on the dollar to what a man makes. Women cannot buy meat cheaper. Women cannot buy bread cheaper. Women cannot buy milk cheaper. Women deserve to get paid for the work that they do. It's right and it's fair. Don't surrender, my friends. Those who have AIDS tonight, you deserve our compassion. Even with AIDS, you must not surrender in your wheelchairs. I see you sitting here tonight in those wheelchairs. I've stayed with you. I've reached out to you across our nation. And don't you give up. I know it's tough sometimes. People look down on you. It took you a little more effort to get here tonight. And no one should look down on you, but sometimes mean people do. The only justification we have for looking down on someone is that we're going to stop and pick them up. But even in your wheelchairs, don't you give up. We cannot forget 50 years ago when our backs were against the wall, Roosevelt was in a wheelchair. I would rather have Roosevelt in a wheelchair than Reagan and Bush on a horse. Don't you surrender and don't you give up. Don't surrender and don't give up. Why can I challenge you this way? Jesse Jackson, you don't understand my situation. You'll be on television. You don't understand. I see you with the big people. You don't understand my situation. I understand. You see me on TV, but you don't know the me that makes me me. They wonder why does Jesse run? Because they see me running for the White House. They don't see the house I'm running from. I have a story. I wasn't always on television. Writers were not always outside my door. When I was born late one afternoon, October 8th, in Greenville, South Carolina, no writers asked my mother her name. Nobody chose to write down our address. A mama was not supposed to make it, and I was not supposed to make it. You see, I was born a teenage mother who was born a teenage mother. I understand. I know abandonment and people being mean to you and saying you're nothing and nobody and can never be anything. I understand. Jesse Jackson is my third name. I'm adopted.
Doc, that was right in the heart of the crescendo of that speech. For our viewers, go on social media, YouTube, and pull the end of that speech. We just didn't want to go this far over. Any closing comments, Dr. Newman? I just can't thank you enough about that night. And again, I remember walking to work, midnight shift from the police department, could hardly see because I was so filled with appreciation for what I had just seen.
Well, I was there that night in the arena.
Wow.
So I remember viscerally what that moment was like and the electricity that was in the room. And I would encourage all of those of you who can take a moment, as Dozie just said, and look it up on social media. It was an unbelievably powerful close to a speech about I understand. You really need to do that. And so I will just end by saying that I think that his life is going to live on through his children, but also through the rest of those who are inspired by him. And his life is one that should be emulated, particularly in these times in which we live, how poignant it is for a time in which there's so much division to be emulating and highlighting and celebrating a life that singularly lived to bring people together. And so I hope that we will do everything that he said almost at every speech he made, keep hope alive. I hope that we'll do that by living out his legacy in our own lives.
Thank you for helping us on this reflection, and thank you for the shining light that you are for the kingdom. I heard one of his children say that he was theologically sound, but he was sociologically sound. And you're one of the ones, just like my mentor was, Reverend Tom Diamond, who you're doing that. And I certainly thank people for you. Thank you for coming by and sharing with us tonight, Doc.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, sir. So this is our show tonight to bless the legend, the legacy of Reverend Jesse Jackson, and we're going to keep our heads up. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to be saying goodbye to the earthly remains, and it won't be easy, as I heard the kids say on Saturday at Operation Push. I always said that if I outlived him wherever I was going to be at his life's services of celebration. And unfortunately, my schedule won't allow me to do it, not over the 2-week period. But I wanted to share this poster now of those celebrations. And of course, you can go online and see them. They've updated it, and they're continually updating it because, for instance, the state of South Carolina allowed him to, his body's going to lie in state there. He has a lot of days at Operation Push, and I think that is just apropos for the leader that he is, and he is ultimately going to be laid to rest the second, I think it's actually the 2nd of March or somewhere on that, and we bless God for that. Listen, I want to end the night, the segment as I see it. I had a mentoring group, but I did this in several functions. Jonathan Jackson came out for us when we were in Sterling, Illinois. Got to know him and the family. But this I brought to our children here in South Florida, and share it with this generation of kids. And you heard Dr. John say that how he always ended. I just want you to know that I am somebody. I am somebody. Red, yellow, black, and white, all are precious in his sight, because I am somebody. Up with hope, down with dope. Up with hope, down with hope. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. We love you very much. We love you, Dr. Jackson.